Look, if you're watching this right now, chances are you've noticed something frustrating. Maybe you've seen guys who aren't particularly handsome pulling beautiful women. Maybe you've watched men with average jobs and regular cars somehow become magnetic to the opposite sex. And you've probably asked yourself what they have that you don't. Well, I'm about to share something with you that might sound almost too straightforward to be true. But I promise you, by the time we're done here, you'll understand exactly why some men become more attractive as they age, while others just become invisible. And no, this isn't about becoming wealthy. This isn't about hitting the gym 6 days a week. And this definitely isn't about memorizing scripts or playing mind games. What I'm talking about are two specific phrases that tap into something primal in human psychology. These aren't magic spells. They're communication tools that create instant emotional resonance. And here's what makes them so powerful. Most men go their entire lives without understanding how to use them properly. They stumble through conversations, hoping something clicks. They wait for permission. They apologize for their own desires. And then they wonder why women see them as friends instead of lovers. The men who truly get this, the ones women can't stop thinking about, they understand something fundamental about feminine psychology. They know that attraction isn't logical, it's emotional. And emotions respond to very specific triggers. So stay with me here because what I'm about to explain will completely shift how you communicate with women. And fair warning, once you see this, you can't unsee it. You'll start noticing it everywhere, in movies, in successful relationships around you, in your own past experiences where things actually worked. For the last decade, I've been fascinated by human behavior, specifically the gap between what people say they want and what actually attracts them. And when it comes to male-female dynamics, that gap is enormous. Women will tell you they want a nice guy who listens, and that's partially true. But what actually creates that spark, that undeniable pull, is something entirely different. It's a man's ability to communicate intent and appreciation simultaneously. See, most men operate in one of two extremes. Either they're too passive, constantly seeking approval, afraid to state what they actually want, or they're too aggressive, projecting neediness disguised as confidence, taking without acknowledging. Both approaches fail for the same reason. They're imbalanced. But when you master the balance, when you learn to express desire while simultaneously showing genuine appreciation, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing, and women start choosing you. So what are these two phrases? The first one is remarkably simple. It's the words "I choose." Now, before you dismiss this as obvious, let me explain the psychology behind it. When you say "I choose" instead of "I like" or "I want," you're communicating something completely different. You're saying that among all available options, you're making a conscious decision. This does two things simultaneously. First, it positions you as someone with options. You're not desperate, you're selective. Second, it frames the interaction as your decision, not something that's happening to you. Think about the difference in these statements. Saying, "I really like spending time with you," versus saying, "I choose to spend my time with you." The first is pleasant but passive. It could apply to anyone. The second is powerful and intentional. It says, "You've evaluated your options, and this is your decision." And here's what's critical. Women are attracted to men who make decisions, not because they want to be controlled, but because decisiveness signals confidence and leadership. These are evolutionary triggers that activate attraction, whether we consciously acknowledge them or not. When you say "I choose," you're also doing something else that's incredibly important. You're taking full responsibility for your interest. You're not hiding behind ambiguity. You're not testing the waters to see if she likes you first. You're putting yourself on the line. And vulnerability, when combined with confidence, is magnetic. It shows you're secure enough to risk rejection. That security is attractive on a deep primal level. But here's where most men mess this up. They use decisive language, but their entire demeanor contradicts it. Their voice wavers, their eye contact falters, their body language screams uncertainty. And women pick up on this instantly. The words matter, but the congruence behind them matters even more. If you say, I choose to take you to that new restaurant downtown while shuffling your feet and looking nervous, the message is scrambled. Your words say confidence, but everything else says fear. This brings us to the second phrase, and this is the one that creates real depth. It's I see. Now, this might sound even simpler than the first one, but the way you use it changes everything. When you tell a woman, I see you, and you pair it with something specific about who she is, you're doing something most men never do. You're acknowledging her beyond the surface. You're communicating that you've actually paid attention, that you notice things others miss. Let me give you a real example of how this works. Let's say you're talking to someone and she mentions that she volunteers at an animal shelter on weekends. Most guys will say something generic like, that's cool, or that's nice of you. But if you understand this principle, you might say something like, I see that you're someone who acts on her values instead of just talking about them. That's rare. Do you feel the difference? You're not just complimenting her actions. You're acknowledging her character. You're showing that you see deeper than most people look. This matters because women are constantly evaluated on their appearance. They're used to shallow compliments. They're used to men who are interested in how they look, but not who they are. So when you demonstrate that you actually see her, that you recognize qualities beyond the physical, you immediately differentiate yourself from 95% of men she encounters. You become memorable. You become someone she thinks about later. And here's the beautiful part. When you combine these two phrases, when you say something like, I choose to spend time with you because I see how you think differently than most people, you create a complete message. You're expressing intent and appreciation simultaneously. You're leading and valuing at the same time. This balance is what creates sustainable attraction. It's what separates a fleeting spark from something that actually builds. Now, let me address something important. Some of you might be thinking this sounds manipulative, like you're using psychological techniques to trick someone. But that's not what this is about. These phrases only work when they're genuine. If you don't actually choose her, if you don't actually see something worth appreciating, then saying these words will come across as empty and manipulative. The power isn't in the words themselves. It's in your ability to communicate authentic intent and genuine appreciation clearly. This is about becoming a better communicator, not a better manipulator. It's about having the courage to be direct instead of hiding behind vague pleasantries. It's about developing the awareness to recognize what makes someone unique and the skill to articulate it. And yes, when you do this, you become more attractive. But you also build better relationships because they're based on clarity and authenticity rather than games and ambiguity. Let me tell you about something I witnessed that perfectly illustrates this principle. I was at a coffee shop and I overheard a conversation between a man and a woman on what was clearly a first date. The guy spent 20 minutes talking about himself, his job, his hobbies, his opinions on various topics. The woman looked polite but bored. Then, about halfway through their conversation, something shifted. He asked her about a book she was reading. She started explaining why she loved the author's perspective. And then he said something that completely changed the energy. He said, I see why that resonates with you. You think in patterns. You connect ideas that most people would miss. Her entire demeanor changed. She leaned forward. She became animated. And for the next hour, they were completely engaged. What happened? He stopped performing and started seeing. He stopped trying to impress and started appreciating. And that shift, that simple acknowledgement of who she actually was, created real connection. This is what most men don't understand. Attraction isn't built through impressive credentials or rehearsed stories. It's built through moments of genuine recognition. When someone feels truly seen by you, they feel valued. And feeling valued creates emotional connection. That connection is what makes you memorable. It's what makes her want to see you again. Now, here's the part where age becomes an advantage rather than a disadvantage. Younger men often struggle with this because they're still trying to figure out who they are. They're performing, they're seeking validation. But as you get older, if you've done the work on yourself, You develop something incredibly attractive. You develop clarity, you know what you want, you know what you value, and you're not afraid to communicate both. This is why you see older men with younger women more often than the reverse. It's not about money or power, though those can be factors. It's about the confidence that comes from self-knowledge. It's the ability to say, I choose this and mean it without neediness. It's the ability to say, I see you and have it land because it comes from a place of genuine observation rather than desperate flattery. But this only works if you've actually developed yourself. If you're 50 years old and still as insecure and unclear as you were at 25, age won't help you. The advantage isn't in the years themselves. It's in what you've done with those years. Have you built a life you're proud of? Have you developed interests and perspectives that make you interesting? Have you learned to be comfortable in your own skin? Because here's the truth. These phrases only work when they're backed by substance. If you say, I choose to spend time with you, but your life is empty and you're clearly desperate for any attention, she'll sense it. If you say, I see you, but you haven't developed the emotional intelligence to actually observe people deeply, it'll come across as a line. The words are tools, but you have to be the craftsman worthy of using them. So what does this look like in practice? It means instead of asking, where do you want to go? You say, I choose to take you to this place I've been wanting to try. Would you join me? Instead of saying you're pretty, you say, I see that you don't follow trends. You have your own sense of style. That confidence is attractive. Do you notice the shift? You're leading instead of following. You're specific instead of generic. You're acknowledging character instead of just appearance. And critically, you're doing this without seeking permission or validation. You're not saying these things to get a particular response. You're saying them because they're true and because you have the confidence to communicate directly. That authenticity is what women respond to, not the specific words, but the energy behind them. The energy that says, I know who I am, I know what I want, and I have the clarity to express both. This is why game playing never works long term. You can memorize lines, you can learn techniques, but if underneath it all you're still insecure and unclear, it'll eventually show. Sustainable attraction comes from actually becoming the kind of man who naturally communicates this way. A man who has developed himself enough to have clear preferences. A man who has enough emotional intelligence to see people beyond the surface. A man who has the courage to express both openly. So if you're watching this and thinking about how to apply it, here's what I want you to understand. Don't just memorize these phrases. Work on becoming the person who would naturally say them. Develop your life so that you genuinely have things you're choosing between. Develop your awareness so that you actually see unique qualities in people. Develop your confidence so that expressing both feels natural rather than rehearsed. Because the real secret isn't in two magic phrases. It's in becoming a man whose entire presence communicates intent and appreciation. When you walk into a room and you carry yourself like someone who knows his value, who has clear desires, and who genuinely appreciates quality when he sees it, you don't need special techniques. Your normal communication becomes attractive because it's coming from an attractive place. This is the difference between trying to act confident and actually being confident, between trying to appear interesting and actually being interesting, between performing appreciation and genuinely feeling it. Women can tell the difference, always. And the ones worth having will only respond to the real thing. So yes, use these phrases. Say, I choose. Say, I see. But more importantly, do the work to become someone who can say them with complete authenticity. Build a life worth choosing. Develop the awareness to see deeply. Cultivate the confidence to express both. That's what creates lasting attraction. That's what makes you the man women can't stop thinking about. Not because you said the right words, but because you became the right man.